The morning sun poured through the wide windows of the Harper residence, casting golden streaks across the kitchen counter. Ethan Harper, 34, glanced at his watch. 6:45 a.m. as he flipped through the final pages of the Tokyo investment proposal. 3 years of late nights, endless calls, and high-stakes negotiations had led to this moment. Today, he'd seal the deal, 40 million square feet of development rights in one of the world's most competitive markets. He adjusted his tie, his sharp blue eyes scanning the numbers one last time. Lila Harper, 31, breezed into the kitchen, her dark hair tied back in a loose ponytail. She wore a simple navy sweater and jeans, nothing flashy, just comfortable. Grabbing a mug from the cabinet, she poured herself some coffee and eyed the papers strewn across the counter. "Big day today, huh?" she asked, leaning over to kiss Ethan's cheek. "As big as it gets," he said, stacking the documents neatly. "The Nakamura Plaza deal could put us on the global map. New partnerships, international investors, the works." He flashed a tired but excited grin. Lila smiled back, sipping her coffee. She knew how much this meant to him. "Well, while you're out conquering the world, I'm hitting the dealership today. The SUV's on its last legs." Ethan looked up, his brow creasing slightly. "You sure you don't want me to come with? I could—" "Nope," she cut in, waving a hand. "You've been prepping for this meeting for months. The last thing you need is to waste half your day watching me haggle over leather seats. I'll handle it." He hesitated, then chuckled. "All right, but you're positive you don't want to reschedule? The Tokyo group's only in town today, but I could figure something out." "Don't be ridiculous," Lila said, squeezing his arm. "I'm just browsing. Plus, I might surprise you with something shiny and new. Go nail your deal, Mr. Hotshot." Ethan grinned, pulling her in for a quick kiss. "Love you. Call me when you're done." "Always," she promised, grabbing her purse. "Love you too." As she headed out, neither of them could have guessed how this ordinary morning would spiral into something unforgettable. Downtown, the Harper Tower loomed over the city skyline, a sleek monument to Ethan's quiet ambition. At 34, he'd built an empire that stretched across 6 countries, but he wasn't the type to flaunt it. Unlike the flashy CEOs who craved magazine covers, Ethan worked behind the scenes, letting his results speak for themselves. His father's advice stuck with him. The name on the building gets respect, but the man behind it earns trust. Inside the penthouse boardroom, Ethan guided the Tokyo investors through his pitch with the ease of someone who'd rehearsed every word. "The Nakamura Plaza will revolutionize urban living," he said, gesturing to a 3D model of the sleek waterfront complex. "Direct marina access for every unit, private boat slips for the penthouses, modern luxury with a timeless edge." Mr. Sato, the lead investor, nodded thoughtfully, his sharp eyes studying the design. "Impressive. The waterfront potential is unmatched." Ethan's phone buzzed discreetly at 11:30 a.m. No messages from Lila. He frowned, odd but not alarming yet, and refocused on the meeting. During a coffee break, he shot her a quick text. "How's the car hunt going? Find anything good?" No reply. By the time lunch rolled around, that tiny flicker of unease had grown into a nagging itch. Lila always texted back. "Ready for lunch?" Mr. Sato asked, snapping Ethan out of his thoughts. "Absolutely," he replied, forcing a smile. His phone buzzed again, an unknown number. He hesitated, then slipped it back into his pocket. The Tokyo deal was too critical to derail now. The private dining room at Marino's overlooked the harbor, sunlight glinting off the waves in a dazzling dance. Normally, Ethan would have been captivated by the view, but today his mind was elsewhere. He pointed to the architectural model on the table. Every detail's been engineered for exclusivity. Marina access, top-tier materials, the works. Mr. Sato nodded, clearly impressed. It's bold yet practical, a rare combination. As the waiter set down plates of grilled salmon with lemon herb sauce, Ethan's phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. Twice in 20 minutes. "Excuse me, gentlemen," he said, standing. "I need to step out for a moment." In the hallway, he answered, his voice low and firm. "Ethan Harper." "Mr. Harper?" The woman on the line sounded nervous. "You don't know me. My name's Mia Torres. I work at Crestwood Motors." Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. "Is this about my wife?" A pause. "Yes, sir. I'm calling because something happened. Mrs. Harper was here earlier, and she wasn't treated right." The air in the hallway seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Explain," Ethan said, his tone clipped. Mia's voice wavered. "She came in looking at the new German models. Our sales manager, Greg Palmer, and some of the senior guys. They judged her based on her clothes. They escorted her out, sir. Said she was wasting their time." Ethan's jaw clenched, a storm brewing behind his calm exterior. "Where is she now?" "She left about half an hour ago. She forgot her phone. That's how I got your number. I'm so sorry, Mr. Harper. I tried to step in, but it happened too fast." "What exactly did they say?" His voice was ice, controlled but lethal. Mia swallowed hard. "They called her. They said she looked broke and couldn't afford anything there. Told her to check the used car lot instead. Palmer even laughed about it after. Said they deal with time wasters like her all the time." Ethan's free hand balled into a fist. "I see." "I couldn't let it slide," Mia added quickly. "It wasn't right." "No, it wasn't," Ethan agreed, his mind already racing with next steps. "Ms. Torres, can I reach you later? Not at the dealership." "Yes, sir." She gave him her personal number. "Are you going to call her? She seemed really upset when she left." "I'll take care of it," he said, softening just a fraction. "Thank you for calling. Your honesty won't go unnoticed." He hung up, standing still for a moment as fury pulsed through him, cold, sharp, and deliberate. They'd humiliated Lila. His Lila. He tried her cell. No answer, obviously. Then their home line. Nothing. She was probably still driving, fuming or hurt or both. For a split second, he considered ditching the meeting and tracking her down. But years of discipline stopped him. This wasn't the time for rash moves. This called for strategy. Ethan straightened his jacket, smoothed his expression, and returned to the dining room. "My apologies," he said, sliding back into his seat. "A small property issue." "Nothing major, I hope?" Mr. Sato asked. Ethan's smile was razor thin. "Nothing I can't handle." Lunch dragged on, but inside, Ethan was already plotting. Crestwood Motors was about to learn a very expensive lesson. The Tokyo group left at 3:30 p.m. Preliminary contracts signed amid handshakes and polite smiles. Ethan kept up the charade, not a crack in his polished facade. The second they were gone, he called his assistant, Sarah, into his office. "Clear my schedule tomorrow," he said, leaning back in his chair, "and dig up everything you can on Crestwood Motors, ownership, finances, loans, legal history, all of it." Sarah raised an eyebrow but didn't question him. She'd worked with Ethan long enough to recognize that tone. "Anything specific I should focus on?" "Everything," he said flatly. "I want their whole world on my desk by morning." She nodded and left. Ethan leaned forward, staring out at the skyline. Lila was home by now. He'd called and confirmed she was safe, though shaken. She'd brushed it off, told him not to worry, but he could hear the hurt in her voice. That was enough. Tomorrow, Crestwood Motors would regret ever crossing the Harpers. Ethan's voice stayed steady, but there was a sharpness to it that made Sarah pause mid-tap on her tablet. "Any problems?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. Sarah, who'd been his assistant for nearly a decade, looked up. "Everything okay, Mr. Harper?" For a split second, Ethan weighed his answer. Sarah had been with him longer than anyone except Lila. Loyal, sharp, unflappable. "No," he admitted, his tone darkening. "But it will be. One more thing. Send security to Crestwood Motors to grab Lila's phone. No names. Just say an employee found it and reported it." Sarah nodded, jotting it down without a flicker of curiosity, and left the office. Ethan turned to his computer, pulling up the preliminary data on Crestwood Motors. It was a franchise under a Chicago-based dealer group with local ownership tied to a holding company called Ridgeview Automotive Partners. Within minutes, he was on the phone, setting his plan in motion. First call, Jake Liu, his head of security. "Jake, I need eyes on Crestwood Motors. Discreet. Start now. Focus on management, who they are, what they do." Second call, Rachel Cohen, his attorney. "Rachel, hypothetically, what's the fallout if I buy a dealership and fire the entire sales team day one?" Her response was cool, methodical. "Legally, minimal if you play it right. Financially depends on their revenue." "What's cooking, Ethan?" "Just kicking around ideas," he said, keeping it vague. "Send me the legal rundown." Third call, Nate Rivera, his go-to investigator. "Nate, dig up everything on a sales manager named Greg Palmer at Crestwood Motors. The dirtier, the better. I want it by sunrise." With the gears turning, Ethan's thoughts shifted fully to Lila. He'd called home twice more, no answer. She'd promised to check in, and her silence gnawed at him. It wasn't like her. He left the office earlier than usual, telling his driver, Mike, to head straight home. "Rough day, Mr. Harper?" Mike asked, catching Ethan's tense expression in the rearview mirror. "Complicated," Ethan replied, staring out at the city blurring past. "Mike, ever feel like making someone regret crossing you?" Mike chuckled, his grizzled voice warm. "More times than I've got gray hairs. But I've learned the world usually sorts itself out." "Sometimes the world needs a nudge," Ethan murmured, the car weaving through late afternoon traffic. His mind replayed the morning, Lila's teasing grin, her insistence he focus on the Tokyo deal. If he'd gone with her to Crestwood, none of this would have happened. He could have spared her the humiliation, shielded her from those small-minded clowns. The guilt twisted deep, sharper than the anger. He'd been chasing millions, prestige, a legacy. Meanwhile, Lila had faced this alone. "Never again," he vowed silently. Business would never trump protecting her again. The car pulled into their gated neighborhood, a quiet stretch of modern estates tucked behind manicured trees and subtle security cameras. As they neared the Harper house, Ethan spotted Lila's beat-up SUV in the driveway. Relief hit him like a wave, followed by a steely resolve. She was home. She was safe. Now he could make Crestwood pay. Inside, the house was still, the usual warmth undercut by a strange tension. Ethan found Lila in the sunroom, curled up in the big armchair overlooking their backyard. A book lay open in her lap, untouched, her dark hair spilling over her shoulders. She looked smaller somehow, fragile in a way that didn't fit the bold, brilliant woman he knew. "Lila," he said softly, setting his briefcase down. She glanced up, her hazel eyes meeting his, and Ethan's chest tightened at the flicker of hurt there. "You're home early," she said, her voice quieter than usual. He crossed the room and knelt beside her chair. "Mia Torres called me." Understanding flashed across her face. She seemed like the only decent one there. "Why didn't you call me?" he asked, taking her hand. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, grounding him. Lila's gaze dropped to their hands. "Your meeting. I didn't want to drag you away over something so small." "Nothing about you is small to me," Ethan said, his voice firm but gentle. "Tell me what happened. All of it." Lila took a shaky breath, then started. She'd rolled into Crestwood Motors around 10:30 a.m., excited to check out their luxury lineup. At first, it was fine. She'd wandered the showroom solo, running her hands over sleek hoods, sliding into a few driver's seats. "I was looking at that new German SUV," she said. "The one with the safety upgrades we talked about." That's when Greg Palmer, the sales manager, strutted over. Mid-30s, slicked back hair, a flashy watch that screamed trying too hard. "Can I help you find something in your budget?" he'd asked, his tone dripping with condescension. "I told him I wanted to test drive the SUV," Lila went on, her voice tightening. He laughed. Laughed, Ethan, right in my face. Said, "That starts at $90,000. Maybe you'd be happier at our used lot down the road." Ethan's jaw locked, but he stayed quiet, letting her finish. "I said I knew the price and still wanted to drive it. That's when he waved over two other guys. They boxed me in, Ethan, like I was some trespasser. Started mouthing off about time wasters and window shoppers loud enough for everyone to hear. Then Palmer," her voice cracked, just for a second. "He put his hand on my back, pushed me toward the door and leaned in close. Said, 'Sweetheart, don't come back unless you've got cash to flash.'" Ethan's grip on her hand tightened, a cold fury surging through him. He could picture it. Lila, bright and confident, reduced to a punchline by some arrogant prick who didn't know who he was messing with. "I'm sorry," he said, voice low. "I should have been there." "Don't," she cut in, shaking her head. "You had your deal. This isn't on you." "It is," he countered, "but it won't happen again. And they're not getting away with it." Lila studied him, a faint spark returning to her eyes. "What are you going to do?" He stood, pulling her up with him, and wrapped his arms around her. "You'll see," he said, kissing her forehead. "They'll regret ever laying eyes on you." That night, Ethan barely slept. By 6 a.m., his desk was covered in files. Sarah's research on Crestwood Motors, Rachel's legal brief, Nate's initial report on Palmer. The guy had a history, complaints from female customers, a hushed-up harassment claim, and a gambling habit that left him underwater on a condo loan. Perfect leverage. Ethan's plan came together fast. Step 1. Acquire Crestwood through Ridgeview Automotive Partners. He'd already placed a call to a contact in Chicago. By noon, he'd have an offer on the table they couldn't refuse. Step 2. Fire Palmer and his cronies, publicly, with enough press to tank their reputations. Step 3. Turn Crestwood into a model dealership, staffed with people like Mia Torres who'd shown spine. At 8 a.m., Lila found him in his home office, coffee in hand. "You're up early," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "Couldn't sleep," he replied, glancing up with a small smile. "How about you?" "Better," she said, stepping closer. "Whatever you're plotting, don't go too crazy, okay? I just want to forget it." Ethan pulled her onto his lap, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Not crazy, just thorough. They don't get to hurt you and walk away." She laughed softly, the first real laugh he'd heard since yesterday. "My knight in shining Armani." "Damn right," he said, kissing her neck. "Now, how do you feel about a new SUV, fully loaded on their dime?" Lila grinned. "You're terrible." "No," he said, his tone turning serious. "They are, and they're about to find out what happens when you mess with the Harpers." Ethan's blood turned to ice as Lila's voice trembled. He whispered, "We don't serve your kind here. This isn't a charity lot." She paused, her eyes distant. Those were his exact words. Ethan stood, pacing the sunroom with deliberate steps, his mind racing. "They said that to you?" he asked, turning to face her. Lila nodded, curling tighter into the armchair. "I've never felt so tiny, Ethan. So insignificant. It wasn't even about the money. It was how they looked at me. Like I was trash, like I didn't deserve to breathe the same air." "Did anyone else see this?" he asked, his voice steady but edged with fury. "Everyone in the showroom," she replied. "An older couple checking out SUVs, a few other customers. No one spoke up. Some even smirked, like it was entertainment." Ethan stopped pacing, his gaze locking onto hers. "I'm so sorry, Lila. I should have been there." She shook her head, her dark hair falling over her shoulder. "You had your meeting. The Tokyo deal." "Doesn't matter," he cut in, his tone final. "Not compared to this." "Did you sign it?" she asked, her concern for him breaking through despite everything. That spark of care only fueled his resolve. "Yeah, we did," he said, sitting beside her and taking her hands in his. "But that's not what's important right now." "It is to me," she insisted, squeezing his fingers. "I don't want this mess to ruin what you've worked for." Ethan's lips twitched into a faint smile, remembering his dad's old saying. "You know what my father used to say about money?" Lila's eyes softened. "That it's a lousy boss but a damn good employee." "Exactly," he said, his voice dropping to a calm, steely register. "And tomorrow it's going to work overtime for us." Her brow furrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Ethan said, leaning closer, "Greg Palmer and Crestwood Motors are about to get a masterclass in customer service." Lila's eyes widened, a flicker of caution in them. "Ethan, don't do anything crazy." "Crazy? No. he said, his smile sharp with intent. Everything I do will be precise, planned, and completely legal. He stood, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. How about I whip up some dinner? Then you can help me figure out how to make Crestwood wish they'd never seen you. For the first time since he'd walked in, Lila's lips curved into a real smile. You're cooking up something sneaky, aren't you? Not sneaky, he corrected, heading for the kitchen. Educational, a lesson they won't forget. As Ethan chopped vegetables, his mind churned with possibilities. By tomorrow, Greg Palmer would regret ever opening his mouth. Midnight found Ethan in his home office, the glow of dual monitors casting shadows across his focused face. Each click, each call, was a brick in the wall of justice he was building. Jake's voice crackled through the speakerphone. Surveillance is set. 6 operatives will hit the dealership at staggered times tomorrow. Mia Torres is covered, like you asked. Ethan nodded, flipping through Palmer's file. 3 past complaints, discrimination, all swept under the rug with hush money, a pattern of arrogance and entitlement. Perfect. Lila appeared in the doorway, her presence softening the edges of his anger. Did I wake you? He asked, glancing up. She shook her head, stepping closer to study the screens. This isn't just revenge, is it? No, he said, taking her hand. It's about making sure no one else feels what you did today. She brushed her fingers along his jaw, her touch grounding him. Just don't lose sight of why you're doing it. I won't, he promised. As she slipped back to bed, Ethan finalized his strategy. By sundown, Palmer would learn the price of his prejudice. The morning sun bounced off the gleaming cars in Crestwood Motors' showroom as Ethan parked his Tesla 3 blocks away. No driver today. Mike was off, and this called for a personal touch. He dressed the part, faded jeans with a rip at the knee, scuffed boots, a worn gray hoodie. His usual tailored look was gone, hair tousled, no sleek watch, just a cheap digital one. Catching his reflection in a shop window, he smirked. Not Ethan Harper, real estate titan, but some regular guy who'd wandered into the wrong place. His phone buzzed. Jake. All systems go. Teams in place. Ethan checked the time. 10:15 a.m. Right on schedule. As he neared the dealership, he spotted the first operative, a gray-haired woman being brushed off toward the budget section by a distracted salesman. Phase 1 was rolling. Ethan stepped inside Crestwood Motors, hunching his shoulders slightly, playing the part of someone out of their depth. His eyes roamed the showroom, lingering on the priciest models, a $140,000 sports coupe, a fully loaded SUV. It took 45 seconds for Greg Palmer to clock him. Ethan had his face burned into memory from the file. Late 30s, slick hair with a touch of gray, a fake tan that screamed weekend golf trips. Palmer elbowed a younger salesman, jerking his chin toward Ethan with a smug grin. Ethan ignored it, running his hand over the coupe's hood like it was a dream he couldn't touch. Palmer sauntered over, his voice thick with disdain. Can I help you find something more realistic? Just looking, Ethan said, feigning a shy glance. This one's nice? That model starts at $140,000, Palmer said, dragging out the number like Ethan was slow. Maybe the used lot's more your speed. Ethan bit back his real response, channeling Lila's hurt instead. I'd like to test drive it, actually. Palmer's smile turned brittle. Test drives need pre-qualification. Income proof, credit check, the works. Your website says they're open to all prospective buyers, Ethan replied, keeping his tone even. 2 more salesmen drifted over, forming a triangle around him, just like Lila described. Palmer dropped the fake politeness. Look, buddy, we both know you're not buying this. Let's not waste my time. How do you know what I can afford? Ethan asked, genuinely curious to hear it. Palmer's eyes raked over his outfit, his sneer cutting. Call it experience. We don't do charity cases here. Ethan let the words hang, feeling the same sting Lila must have. He nodded slowly, as if defeated. Got it. Then he turned and shuffled out, head down, but inside he was grinning. Palmer had just dug his own grave. Back in his Tesla, Ethan dialed Jake. Phase 1's done. He took the bait. Same script he ran on Lila. Copy that, Jake said. Next wave's inbound. Over the next 2 hours, Ethan's operatives hit Crestwood hard. A young woman in yoga pants got laughed off the lot. A guy in a delivery uniform was told to stick to scooters. Each encounter was recorded, audio, video, the works, by hidden devices and a drone circling overhead. Palmer led the charge every time, his ego blinding him to the pattern. By noon, Ethan had the Chicago holding company on the line. Ridgeview Automotive Partners jumped at his offer. Cash, quick and quiet. Ownership papers would be his by day's end. Nate's report came in too. Palmer's gambling debts were deeper than expected, and he'd been skimming trade-in profits. Checkmate. At 3 p.m., and Ethan returned to Crestwood, this time in his real skin. Tailored suit, polished shoes, the air of a man who owned the world. Palmer spotted him from across the showroom, confusion flashing over his face. Ethan didn't flinch, just walked straight to the manager's office and dropped the signed acquisition docs on the desk. What the hell is this? Palmer sputtered. You're fired, Ethan said, voice cold as steel. You and your little posse, clean out your desks. Palmer laughed, incredulous. You can't. I own this place now, Ethan cut in, tossing a press release onto the pile. Tomorrow, every news outlet in the city's running the story. Crestwood Motors, where prejudice costs jobs. Your name's front and center. Palmer blanched. Ethan leaned in, voice low. You humiliated my wife. This is what happens when you pick the wrong target. As security escorted Palmer out, Ethan called Lila. It's done. How's dinner sound? Her laugh was light, relieved. Only if it comes with that SUV you promised. Deal, he said, smiling. Crestwood Motors was his now, and it'd never treat anyone like Lila again. Time wasters, Greg Palmer said, his voice dripping with smug certainty. People who clearly don't belong in a place like this. Ethan let the words sink in, a perfect echo of what Lila had faced. The same arrogance, the same blind prejudice, laid out without a shred of shame. He glanced at his watch. 10:23 a.m. Phase 2 was ready to roll. So you can tell that just by looking at me? Ethan asked, keeping his tone soft, almost curious. Palmer swapped smirks with his cronies. Look, man, we see it every day. People stroll in here, playing pretend with cars they can't touch, while real buyers get stuck waiting. Right on cue, a voice cut through the showroom. Excuse me, I've been waiting 20 minutes to talk about that luxury SUV. It was Mrs. Eleanor Grayson, a retired theater director and a friend of Lila's mom, her silver hair gleaming as she squared off with a flustered salesman. Ma'am, like I said, That might be out of your range, the guy stammered. And how would you know my range? She shot back, her voice crisp and commanding, carrying across the floor like a stage pro. At the same time, a sharply dressed black couple near the SUVs, operatives Ethan had briefed, were being nudged toward the budget lot despite mentioning their $150,000 budget. The showroom was turning into a live exhibit of Crestwood's rotten core, every move orchestrated yet raw in its truth. Palmer muttered, "What the hell's going on?" as his eyes darted around. Through the glass doors, Ethan caught the glint of a news van pulling up. "Justice," Ethan said simply, checking his watch again. 10:28 a.m. The doors swung open, and Tara Brooks strode in, camera guy trailing her, press badge swinging. "We're doing a feature on discrimination in high-end retail," she announced, zeroing in on Mrs. Grayson. "I hear you've had some trouble today?" Palmer's tan faded to a sickly gray. "This is private property." "With public access," Tara cut in, unfazed. "We've had multiple tips about Crestwood Motors just this morning." Ethan's team sprang to life. The customers he'd planted shared their stories, each one a brick in the wall closing around Palmer. Real patrons watched, some nodding like they'd seen this play out before. Palmer spun toward Ethan, suspicion hardening his glare. "Who are you?" Ethan straightened, shedding the slouchy act. His posture shifted, his gaze sharpened, and even in beat-up jeans and a hoodie, he radiated control. "Someone you should have treated with respect," he said, "like everyone who walks in here." "What is this?" Palmer snapped, his voice pitching up as the media crew closed in. "This," Ethan said, his voice ringing clear across the now hushed showroom, "is a lesson in judging books by their covers." He nodded toward the entrance as Lila stepped in, stunning in a simple black dress, her quiet strength cutting through the chaos. "Yesterday, this woman, my wife, came here looking for a car. Instead of help, she got humiliation. Instead of respect, she got shoved out the door." Palmer's face twitched with recognition. "Look, there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Ethan said, voice like steel. Jake slipped in beside him, tablet in hand, playing yesterday's footage. Palmer's sneer, his hand on Lila's back, the whole ugly scene. "It's all on tape." Ethan turned to the room. "My name's Ethan Harper. As of 9 a.m., my company owns Ridgeview Automotive Partners, your parent group, which makes me your boss." He paused, letting it land. "Or it would if you still had a job." Palmer's jaw dropped. "You can't just—" "I can. I did. It's done," Ethan said, brushing past him. He faced the sales floor. "Mia Torres is your new manager, effective now. Anyone staying on gets mandatory sensitivity training. Anyone who doesn't—" He jerked his thumb toward the exit. "There's the door." The room froze, then erupted in murmurs as Palmer stumbled back, security already moving in to escort him out. A week later, Ethan and Lila sat on their patio, the evening breeze rustling the trees. The New York Times business section lay between them, a headline catching the light. "Harper Enterprises rolls out diversity push in auto dealerships." Lila sipped her iced tea, eyeing him over the rim. "You've kicked off something bigger than just canning one jerk." Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Mia called today. Applications from minority candidates are up 70% since we shook things up. And Palmer? He's slinging used cars at his cousin's lot in Phoenix. Word is, luxury dealers won't touch him." Lila reached for his hand. her fingers warm against his. You know what got me? It wasn't just about punishing the bad guys. You opened doors for the good ones. He squeezed her hand, thinking back to his dad's words. Success isn't about what you stack up. It's about what you give back. Seeing how they treated you, someone I'd move mountains for, it hit me. How many others deal with that crap daily, with no way to push back? So you pushed for them, she said, finishing his thought. Tried to, he said with a shrug. They sat there, hands linked, the quiet stretching comfortably until Lila broke it. I picked a car, by the way. Ethan raised an eyebrow. From our dealership, I hope? Of course, she said, grinning. Mia was a gem, though I'm pretty sure the owner slipped me a discount. He laughed, pulling her close. The owner's wife gets the VIP treatment, whatever she wants. Lila nestled into him, her voice soft. It was never about the money, was it? Nope, he said, kissing her temple. It's about dignity, making sure everyone gets theirs, no matter what they're wearing or driving. Some lessons, Ethan mused, were worth every cent. Palmer and Crestwood had learned the hard way. Judge the wrong person, and the bill comes due. Epilogue. Vibe. Optional nod to your closing. If this hit you where it counts, remember, dignity's not tied to your outfit or your ride. It's in how we lift each other up. Ever been judged wrong or seen it happen? Drop your story below. Hit subscribe for more tales where justice shows up in unexpected threads. Tell us where you're tuning in from. California, Maine, wherever. We're here to call out prejudice, one story at a time. The late afternoon sun dipped low over the Harper residence, painting the backyard in shades of orange and gold. Ethan Harper, 34, leaned back in a patio chair, a cold beer in hand, watching Lila chase their neighbor's golden retriever around the grass. At 31, she still had that spark, laughing as the dog dodged her, tail wagging like a metronome. It was a rare, quiet Saturday, no deals to close, no fires to put out, just them, the dog, and a moment to breathe. That peace shattered when Ethan's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen. Nate Rivera, his investigator. With a sigh, he picked up. Nate, it's the weekend. What's up? Got a heads up you'll want to hear, Nate said, his voice low. You know that community center project you funded downtown? Someone's skimming the budget. Looks like the contractor's pocketing cash meant for supplies. Ethan's grip tightened on the bottle. The center was his baby. A $2 million push to give kids in rough neighborhoods a safe spot to learn and play. He'd poured his own money into it, not just corporate funds, because he'd grown up 2 blocks from where it stood. You sure? He asked. Dead sure, Nate replied. Caught him on a call bragging about it. I've got names, dates, invoices. Say the word, and I'll bury him. Ethan set the beer down, his jaw clenching. Send me everything. I'll handle it. Lila jogged over, brushing dog hair off her jeans. Who was that? Nate, he said, keeping it short. Trouble with the community center? Her smile faded. What kind? Contractors stealing from the budget, he said, standing to pace. Money meant for those kids. New computers, basketball courts. Gone into some jerk's offshore account. Lila frowned, crossing her arms. What are you going to do? Expose him, Ethan said, already mapping it out. Call the lawyers, get the proof to the press, shut the whole thing down. She tilted her head, studying him. You sound like you're going to war. Maybe I am, he shot back, sharper than he meant. This isn't just business, Lila. It's personal. I promised those kids something better, and this guy's screwing them over. Lila stepped closer, her voice steady. I get it, but you're not the only one who promised them something. The city's in on this. The donors, the volunteers. You don't have to carry it all. He stopped pacing, her words hitting like a brake pedal. She was right. He'd jumped straight to fixing it solo, like always. So what's your play? He asked, softer now. Call a meeting, she said. Get everyone, council reps, donors, even the parents. Lay out what Nate found, then let them help. You don't have to be the lone hero every time. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, exhaling. You're saying I should trust other people to step up? Exactly, she said, poking his chest with a grin. You're not Superman, babe. You're just a guy with a big heart and a bigger checkbook. He chuckled, pulling her into a hug. Fine. Meeting it is. But if they drop the ball, I'm still crushing this guy. Deal, she said, kissing his cheek. Now, come help me catch that dog before he digs up the roses. Monday morning, Ethan sat at the head of a crowded conference table downtown. City council members, donors, and a dozen parents filled the room, their faces a mix of concern and confusion. Nate stood by the projector, clicking through slides. Fake invoices, tapped calls, bank records. The contractor, a slick 38-year-old named Derek Voss, had siphoned off $200,000, enough to gut half the project. This is what we're up against, Ethan said, keeping his tone even. I could handle it myself. Lawsuits, headlines, the works. But Lila made me see this isn't just my fight. It's ours. A councilwoman, mid-30s with sharp eyes, leaned forward. What do you need from us? Pressure, Ethan said. You've got pull with permits. Stall his other jobs. Donors, lean on your networks to freeze him out. Parents, spread the word. Make it so he can't hide. A dad in a faded jacket spoke up. My kid was counting on that computer lab. I'll tell everyone I know. Good, Ethan said, nodding. Nate's got enough to nail him legally. Let's make sure he feels it everywhere else, too. By the end of the hour, the room buzzed with plans, social media blasts, calls to local news, even a protest outside Voss's office. Ethan watched, a slow grin spreading. Lila was right. He didn't have to shoulder it alone. 2 weeks later, the fallout hit hard. Voss's company tanked, permits yanked, clients bailing, his name smeared across every local channel. The center got back on track, with new oversight and an extra $50,000 from donors who'd rallied. Ethan and Lila stood outside it one evening, watching kids stream in for the grand opening, laughter echoing off the fresh paint. You were right, he said, slipping an arm around her waist. I didn't need to play lone wolf. She smirked. Told you, people want to help. They just need a push. He looked at the crowd, parents snapping pics, kids racing to the gym. I used to think trusting others was a risk. Turns out, it's how you win. Lila leaned into him. Lesson learned, Mr. Hotshot? Yeah, he said, kissing her hair. Strength's not in going it alone. It's in building something together. The lesson. In American life, where hustle and self-reliance are king, it's easy to think you've got to carry every burden solo. But real power comes from trusting others to step up. Ethan learned that one guy with a plan can start a fire, but a team with a purpose can burn down the whole forest. Whether it's a project, a fight, or just getting through the day, don't be afraid to share the load, because the wins are bigger when they're not just yours.